What's going on, everyone? This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Delta Leaf Labs, because it doesn't matter if you're running a small home grow or a big commercial cultivation operation. When you use the plant DNA sex testing kit from Delta Leaf Labs, you can find out 4 times faster what the sex of that plant is going to be. See, Delta Leaf makes it really easy to take a sample from your plant, and then you send that into the lab. A couple of days after they get it, you'll know exactly what you've got to work with, whether you've got a male or a female plant. And the sooner you know that, the more time and money that's going to save you. So go over to deltaleaflabs.com, order your plant DNA sex testing kits today, and don't forget to use the coupon code IMGS10 to get 10% off of that order. Now I want to talk once again about raw CBD, or CBDA. You see, a lot of times when hemp is processed for that CBD oil, somewhere in that processing, that oil gets heated up. And that heat just basically destroys that very delicate, very beneficial acid molecule that evaporates off with that extra heat. And the heating up and evaporation of that acid molecule is called decarboxylation. And that's basically what converts CBDA to just regular CBD. Which is a shame, because we're just discovering that CBDA is more bioavailable to the human body. Now this just means that we can metabolize a compound with less effort and in less time. And this raw CBD, this CBDA, is what you get in every product of 101 CBD. It doesn't matter if it's the tinctures or the body balms. They're all great products. So go over to 101cbd.org, order yourself and your pet some CBD oil. And don't forget to use coupon code IMGS25 to get 25% off at checkout. Okay, now let's get started. Brothers and sisters, how's everything going today? Thank you for joining me once again for the In My Grow Show, the podcast dedicated to taking the mystery out of cannabis. I'm your host, Alex. Now, later on in this episode, I'm going to play a conversation that I had with Spenser from Craft Buds. We had a really awesome conversation about soil structure, but that's a little later. First, I want to talk a little bit about the Ojai Herbal Symposium that's been going on this weekend up here. I was lucky enough to get some press credentials so I could, sit in on some of the presentations because they've been really awesome. Sadly, this weekend's been really busy for me. We've also been doing a bake sale to help my daughter because she's in the 8th grade and her 8th grade class is doing a Washington, D.C., New York City trip this year. So in order to raise funds for that, we did a bake sale, which was also this weekend. So because of that, I've been kind of jumping in and out from the Herbal Symposium. I haven't been able to actually sit through the whole day. But from what I have seen, it's really freaking cool, man. The couple presentations that I did sit in, I've learned, I learned a little bit. I should just say, really broad strokes about like plant-based medicine that a lot of native cultures have used over the decades. It was really interesting. I also sat in a presentation last night about essential oils and herbs. That was pretty cool. But I'm definitely going to be there later on today to go see my buddy Dr. Jake Felice give a presentation about the endocannabinoid system. So that'll be cool to see that presentation from him and just say hi to Jake, man. I love talking to that guy. Okay, now let's get to the strain of the week. Once again, this is sponsored by Sespe Creek Collective. And we're going to start with the King Louis VIII, which is a phenotype of the OG Kush. Now, it does have a nice citrusy, flowery, kind of peppery taste and smell to it. There's also one other terpene I just can't place. It's not really like, wet dirt. It's like a not really piney either. It's hard. It's like a wet wood. I don't know. I don't know if that's exactly a good term for it. Wet wood. Huh. Sounds like a cover band, doesn't it? Wet wood. Anyways, yeah, like the King Louis. Had a nice heady high. Felt it first in my eyeballs, which is really good for me. That's how I know, this would be really good for pain. It is an indica dominant. And even though it had a 20% THC, it didn't really bring me crashing down. Again, because most indicas for me, once the ride's over, it just ends like real quick. Bam! Time for a nap, Alex. And that didn't happen with this King Louis. Now King Louis kind of, tapered off real nicely. Didn't really get sleepy. But it was not a daytime weed, that's for sure. It was a nice nighttime kind of winding down kind of smoke. So remember that. And that was put together by Henry's Original. Now, the other flower I want to talk about is the orange creamsicle, and it is a cross between the orange crush and the juicy fruit. It was a beautiful, nice, long-lasting cerebral sativa. Nice, real heady high, really good for keeping me focused. And it had a THC of 21%. Now, the flavor was a little tangy, sweet kind of orange taste to it. When I say tangy, that's like an overripe mango or something like that. Something that's just about to go bad, but still a little sweet. That's the kind of tanginess, that flavor that it had to me. And the high came on really quick, which was nice. I kind of knew what I was getting into once that happened. And I also liked the way the high kind of evaporated off. I didn't really notice that I was stoned anymore. I was still really focused on work and what I was doing, and just realized, hey, wow, right on. I'm sober. And that orange creamsicle was put together by Lowell Farms. I picked both of those up at Sespe Creek Collective in beautiful downtown Ojai. You can find them at 408 Bryant Circle, Suite C. And they want to remind you that this Monday, like every Monday, is a Munchie Monday. That's a lot of Mondays. And the featured edible is going to be the Satori Chocolate CBD Strawberries. Buy one package for $20 and get the second package for $3. That sounds like a deal of the day. Don't forget Munchie Mondays. All right, now let's move on to my social media and what's going on there. So I saw this news report come out of El Paso, Texas, and the reason why it kind of caught my eye was because I spent my teenage years in El Paso, Texas. I went to high school there. And this comes from the TV station KFOX 14. And the title reads, Proposed Resolution Would Stop Immediate Arrest for Some Marijuana Possession Charges. And it starts off, El Paso City Council will discuss a resolution that suggests people caught with less than 4 ounces of marijuana would not have to be immediately arrested. So what they basically voted on was that if the police catch someone with 4 ounces or less of cannabis, that instead of them arresting them right away and, holding them in jail until their court sentence, until their court hearing, that they would just give them a citation, which I think is better than, holding someone until their court date is ready, because that could be months. Who knows, right? I have no idea how long it takes for a possession charge in El Paso to take, but it could take months, I guess. So that's cool. I mean, they're not really saying that they're decriminalizing anything. You can still, for 4 ounces of weed in Texas, in El Paso, you could still catch, quite the charge. I think they could charge you with, a year in prison and $4,000 in fines. I believe so. Yeah, but, I mean, shit, it's a start, right? Any little bit helps to keep people out of a fucking cage. So, good on El Paso. I hope this kind of helps push them forward to, actually decriminalizing and legalizing possession there. And that's all I really wanted to talk about in my social media feed. Now, let's talk a little bit about the report from the Cannabis Frontline. And the first thing I want to talk about is recreational cannabis sales starting December 1st in Michigan. That's going to be fun. Good on everybody in Michigan. Hope you guys have a really good time with it. I know we did in California here and still are. I don't know why Michigan pushed up the date that they were going to allow recreational adult sales. Because I know earlier this year they were going to start allowing it, I believe, in the 1st of January 2020. So, but either way, that's cool. I know eventually that they're going to hit some kind of shortage. Every state does every time they go recreational. It's a big freaking windfall. Everybody's selling a whole bunch of weed, and then 2 months into it, oh no, we're running short. And hopefully Michigan has it, a little bit put together better than other states have, because when that happens, when that shortage of legal weed happens, the black market kind of steps in and says, that's okay, we got you covered. So hopefully they figure that out. But either way, a good on you, happy smoking to everybody in Michigan who is a cannabis fan. The other thing I wanted to talk about in the report is this study that was published recently, and it's called Uncovering the Hidden Antibiotic Potentials of Cannabis. And the abstract or the summary reads, the spread of antimicrobial resistance continues to be a priority health concern worldwide, necessitating exploration of alternative therapies. Cannabis sativa has long been known to contain antibacterial cannabinoids, but their potentials to address antibiotic resistance has only been superficially investigated. Here we show some cannabinoids exhibit antibacterial activity against MRSA, inhibiting its ability to form biofilms and eradicate stationary phase cell persistence to antibiotics. we show that the mechanisms of actions of cannabigerol, or CBG, is through targeting the cytoplasmic membranes of gram-positive bacteria and demonstrating in vivo efficiencies of cannabigerol in a murine systemic infection model caused by MRSA. We also show that cannabinoids are effective against gram-negative organisms whose outer membrane is permeabilized, where cannabigerol acts on the inner membrane. Finally, we demonstrate that cannabinoids working in combination with polymysic B, wow, I don't know if I got that right, against multi-drug resistant gram-negative pathogens reveal a broad spectrum of therapeutic potential for cannabinoids. Okay, so basically what they found is that cannabigerol, or CBG, that it's really good against some of these diseases or some of these pathogens that have been known to be drug resistant, like MRSA, especially in hospitals. And it's not the first time that I've heard about this, but I think this is one of the first actual human studies that have been happening. So it was a really interesting thing to read. There is a link in the show notes for it. Now, in the link, the abstract is going to come up. But on that same page, if you want to read the full, wordy scientific paper, there's a PDF section you can click on, and it'll give you the whole thing, and you can read and nerd out about it. But I thought that was really cool that, cannabinoids, especially cannabigerol or CBG, is going to be, or can be used to fight MRSA. So that'll be cool to keep an eye on. All right, and finally in the report, this is an article I found over at Forbes, and it's entitled "Thailand Will Allow Its Citizens to Grow Cannabis at Home to Sell to the Government." And it was written by Sarah Brittany Somerset. And it starts off, Thailand is ramping up their medical marijuana legalization efforts that will soon allow that all Thais to cultivate 6 cannabis plants in their homes and sell their homegrown harvest to the government to turn into medical marijuana. Now, I think that's pretty awesome for the Thai government to say, hey, instead of giving all of this business to big companies, we're going to make it legal for every citizen to grow 6 plants, or every household. I don't really know the details. But either way, they can grow them as big as they want, and as long as they're medical quality, they can sell them back to the government, or they can sell them to the government, so the government can use it to sell as medicine. Which sounds great to me. That sounds awesome because it's empowering all of these citizens, man, especially in a country where wages are really low. I think this is a way that's really going to be able to help the citizenry out. The only problem that I see from what I was reading in this article is actually teaching people how to grow medical quality. Because the government is going to be inspecting the cannabis. Not just anybody can sell their weed to the government for medicine. It has to be a certain quality. And that's going to be the real challenge, is getting all of these new cultivators, just to understand a good way to grow weed. To use good inputs, to use good nutrients, So that'll be awesome to see. That'll be awesome to see how they work that out. Again, as always, there is a link in the show notes so you can read it for yourself. But I think they should do that. I think we should do that here in America. That'd be an awesome thing, right? Grow 6 plants, sell it back to the government, that's the way we used to do it when it was medical in California, right? You were able to, it's kind of gray area, but you were able to kind of just sell your excess to the medical dispensaries. Now, it wasn't getting tested, but it's a good model. There's got to be a way we can do that here in America and still, take it in to get tested and then from there sell it. Let's try that. I say we try that. Come on, who's with me? Anyways, that was a report from the Cannabis Frontline. Now next, I'm going to play a conversation that I had with Spenser Thomas from Craft Buds. We had a really awesome conversation about, soil structure. And he talked about a really easy way that we could test our soil to make sure that we have the right amount of ratio of things that we need in it, like clay, sand, and silt. And we talked a bit about the products that Craft Buds makes and how it helps our soil structure. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to play a little bit of music, then I'm going to put on that conversation for you. All right. Well, everyone, today with me, I've got Spenser Thomas, who is one of the founders of Craft Buds. Hey, Spencer, so do me a favor, man. Can you describe what Craft Buds is?
Sure. Craft Buds is, for all intents and purposes, a soil amendment company. Now, we do make products that will work with hydroponics and other, grow mediums, stuff like that. But really born of trying to deliver a more beneficial soil ecology and fill in the gaps, address the law of the minimum, the law of the maximum, and really just try to help take a lot of the guesswork out of growing for a lot of amateur home growers and people trying to start, as well as people who know what they're doing. Really just trying to provide high quality soil amendments and minerals to the people who need them.
Hey, so you said something interesting right there as far as, because it's the soil amendments that you guys have, it is a liquid soil amendment, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Now, how does that work? It works pretty well in hydroponics. I mean, it's not going to clog anything, is it? Because a lot of liquid fertilizers wound up just, sitting at the bottom of tanks.
Right. Yes. Now, so most of our products we filter very finely. These can fit through any sort of nano drip emission systems, spray systems, and you're not going to get clogs from anything that's in our products. And we worked a long time to make sure that was the case. Now, like I said, mostly we work with soil, but if you're not going to need as high as an application rate in hydroponics for our stuff, so that's also going to kind of mitigate that hazard. But yeah, a lot of people trying to use that kind of thing, they're going to get sediments or smaller things starting to accumulate in their tubes and things like that. It's really not a problem with our products, just because of how we're sort of processing and manufacturing them. That being said, there is organic matter in our products, and while a good level of aeration and that kind of stuff's gonna kind of lower it down, you might get a little bit of smell. That's going to happen. So people are usually hesitant about using organic based products in their hydroponic systems. But it's possible. We wanted to make sure that people could use it if that's what they wanted to do. It'll deliver great results. But yeah, that was something that we had to think about when looking at the hydroponic industry, is whether or not this was going to be feasible. And it looks like we've landed at a place where it works.
Now, you guys have 3 different products, though, or 3 different types of fertilizer. You've got the terpene boost. You've got a humic acid also.
Yes, sir.
And a root zone microbe.
Yes.
So let's go through these, man. The terpene boost, what am I getting with the terpene boost? What am I using that for? Am I using that throughout the whole life cycle of my plant?
Yeah. So our terpene booster, we've had that in various formulations for years, and what Craft Buds is really somewhat new of a venture that I've started out with the amendments like that. Our terpene booster is a grow media optimizer for all intents and purposes. So it's going to be adding those beneficial microbes and bacteria back to your soil throughout your grow. You're going to want to be adding this in dosages. It's going to, reduce the amounts of fertilizer that you're going to need. Like I said, it adds not only the microbes, but it adds a little bit of food substance for them so that they can keep staying alive and doing their thing, along with, azomite, micronutrients, minerals, and a little bit of humic acid in that as well, just to help with some of the root processes and cation exchange capacities there. But you're going to want that to, really cover the base and make sure that, again, your soil ecology is thriving, because a lot of people, there's a difference between dirt and soil, and dirt is dead for the most part. If it's not soil, it's not really going to be giving you any sort of yield or allowing your plant to do what it needs to do. So that's going to be a full plant nutrition supplement right there.
So that terpene boost is just going to help keep those microbes alive that are just going to help break down and make those nutrients plant available. It's not like I'm using it as a fertilizer directly or as feeding.
Correct. Yeah, this is going to be something that you can use alongside your fertilizers to make sure, whatever's in there is going to be made readily accessible to your plants. Like you said, it's going to break it down and do some recycling, help fix whatever nitrogen is going to be in there, and really just, add a little bit of competitive antagonism in there too for whatever sort of nefarious microbes might be lurking around. These things have a great job of propagating and just kind of filling out the soil so that there's not much room for anything else that's going to kind of add some biotic stressors to your plants, which just in the end, helps alongside with some of the specific interactions of our microbes. It helps encourage the production of trichomes and, the terpenes within. And in this day and age with a lot of solvents and, the concentrates, terpenes are quickly becoming king. Nobody wants to enjoy flower or anything like that tastes and smells bad. Nobody's got time for that now.
Yeah, the market's too crowded for that, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we're coming with the craft bud angle, is we want you to be able to have something that really stands apart. We feel like every part of the experience should be something you enjoy, from the smells to the flavors to eventually the feelings and the entourage effect that the terpenes can have with the other cannabinoids. This is something you're putting effort into. We feel like you should be able to get some really good product out of it.
Now, so help me understand, how's humic acid helping our soil?
That's a great question. Humic acid has been around for quite a long time, and along with fulvic acid, there's been some dubious claims that have been made for it, but there are a couple things that humic acid just absolutely does it's just great for your soil. Number one, it's going to help with your soil structure, because it's going to increase your ability for your soil to retain water while also maintaining a great drainage rate. So it's going to help with your tilth, your airflow. It's going to promote that there's enough of an aggregate between the soil particles, so they're kind of bound together in a structure that's going to be stronger. It's not going to break down through watering or any sort of your plant getting jostled around, which is a huge. And we can touch more on soil structure in a bit, but really not to get too scientific about it. It's colloidal when it provides a structure to the soil, so it spreads out throughout and binds it together in a way, like I said, that you got aggregates, you got micro aggregates, and these are going to just provide gateways through your roots to go through, as well as the water and everything to go where it needs to.
So
another thing.
Hold on. So now, when you're talking about aggregates, that's just like the ability of the soil particles to kind of clump together to make a bigger particle, which lets air flow and water flow a little easier in between them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Right. The aggregate itself is that bound soil structure. So as opposed to a couple loose particles sitting on top of each other, kind of rolling about with whatever touches them, these are going to be kind of glued into shape, so that, just like you said, air can pass through them without being inhibited by a falling particle, whatever you want to say. It forms almost like a lattice structure, a sloppy lattice, but a lattice nonetheless.
Right.
So everything's going to have an easier time moving throughout it, which is what you want in the end.
Right, and that's what that humic acid is helping do, and is just help kind of bind it together and giving the microbes a place to live, basically.
Yes, absolutely. The microbes are going to love it. It's a great place for my next point too. When the humic acids have a really good way of especially in very clay-filled soils, they have a great way of chelating nutrients and micronutrients away from those particles that otherwise aren't going to release them. You can kind of think of humic acid particles as a little claw. And so they kind of come in and get those particles and micronutrients, trace minerals in between the little fingers of their claw. And they're able to hold on to it tight enough so that they can protect them from getting lost or, otherwise volatilizing out of the soil, leaching through the soil. They're holding on to that. But they're also, for lack of a better term, weak enough to release them to the plants whenever the plant needs it. They have a kind of interesting way of knowing that, because humic acid's attached to a cation exchange site, which is where these kind of things are being traded. So they hold on to it. They're at the cation exchange site, so they can tell exactly when what's needed, and they're kind of helping move everything through. Not quite a conveyor belt, but almost like a fireman's line of handing the bucket of nutrients to the next particle. And that can be an incredibly good thing to have for people who are growing in fields outside or just planting directly in the ground in their backyard where they don't necessarily have access to huge tillers or anything like that, bringing in large amounts of soil. This is really going to do a great job at conditioning your soil, not just with that aggregate nature, but also being able to pull out nutrients that otherwise were probably not going to be, either bioavailable or just physically accessible by the plant.
Hey, Spencer, real quick. So, do you grow personally, like for your own self?
Yeah, I do actually. For the most part, what I do is I test different things with our products to see, what kind of strategies, if I can find out new ways that we can utilize our products or just new things that we're working on. So, really, as far as personal grows, I haven't been able to do that for about a year or so. But yeah, it's always something I like to do when I have the time. I've got 2 side by side going right now that I'm actually looking at
When
that are just a very basic test of being put in some soil, same soil next to each other, Costa Maine Stonington blend, one with just water, one with just our products, and showing just how easy it can be with just a good starting soil and then some microbial amendments is really all you're going to need.
Hey, when
Yeah.
you're growing for your own, do you build your own soil? Do you like to build your own soil, or do you just get a product for your feedings?
So I haven't had as much time as I would like to be able to. That's always, when it's something that I'm going to be able to set aside some time and go through. Building a soil, you really can't go wrong. If you've got access to the different components, that's going to, you can specifically decide what's in there. That's always going to be the best. And you know where it's coming from. So you can minimize any sort of pathogen contamination or anything of just a bagged soil that might have been sitting in a warehouse. But for the most part, for the last few rounds, I've just been going with soils that I know are tried and true. I like a premix that has a decent amount of organic matter, stuff like that, mycorrhizae. And then really, yeah, I don't put too many inputs into mine other than just amendments when you're starting with a good soil.
Yeah, like you were saying, you can't really go wrong building your own soil. There are a lot of really good already pre-mixed bags out there, though. But
Yeah,
it's all about what you
yeah,
got time for, really.
yeah. And, yes, building your soils, not only is it the best, but it also does give you like kind of a more tangible understanding of what your plant needs and how it's going to interact with the soil. What kind of ratios and that kind of things are needed. And, it's if anybody gets the chance to be able to do that, even on a smaller scale, you can buy small bags of these things that you would bring together to build a super soil, for lack of a better term. You don't have to be making huge batches. So if you have the time, it's definitely something I'd suggest to many people if they're growing with soil. If they've got the time and they're willing to tinker around with it, try building your own soil, and likely in the end, you're going to need to add something that's going to add life to the soil because you'll, again, have everything that's down there, but you're going to need some microbes and beneficial bacteria down there helping out doing the work. But definitely something that everybody should try if they get the chance.
Hey, so tell me a little bit about your root zone microbes. Speaking of the roots in the soil.
Right. Our root zone microbes is really one of my favorite things that we have because it does a lot of what I've talked about with our soil, microbial thing. So it's a stimulant and an inoculant that it's going to help manage in the your disease cycles throughout the soil, which can hit especially in outdoor growers. But indoor growers, I've run across several who have had infected soils, and they just kind of push through it, or they lose the crop, and it's hard to work through that, especially in California with the regulations regarding what you can and can't use to kind of compete against these things. Our root zone microbes has a blend. Excuse me. Has a blend of a couple different microbes. So we're using in that one Bacillus licheniformis, Bacillus subtilis, and Pseudomonas putida. And these are all really good with competitive antagonism. And when that comes down to is really, like I said, not quite out competing, but they really work to, populate faster than other things can in your soil that would otherwise, cause disease or potentially lock up nutrients, and it inhibits these organisms. I've got some that I can actually give you a link to afterwards. I've got some pictures on our site that show the differences just even between some like Pythium and Rhizoctonia infected soil, just the massive difference that even a treatment of this stuff can do to ensure that your plants are still thriving no matter what. And not only that, it's these things are at the same time recycling nutrients, also improving your soil structure, adding to the decomposition nature of the normal biological functions of a healthy soil. They're kind of helping speed that along while also, retaining any nutrients that are in there once these bacteria and fungi multiply, and they gather up free nitrogen from the soil and convert it to protein in their bodies, and then once they go away, boom, you've got those you've got those nutrients still in your soil. They haven't volatilized away. The one thing about our root zone microbes right now, and this is another California thing, is rightfully so. California requires a lot of, testing. You got to keep up to date with your tests. There's a lot of things that you can and can't say what's going on. So at the moment, we have been waiting on the latest evaluation of the test that we just sent in. So RZM right now is not currently on the shelves, although it's, like I said, one of my favorites, if not the favorite product that we have right now. So while not currently available, that's something that should be coming back very soon. And just something that really anybody growing in soil should use. There's no toxic residue. This is all relying on normal biological function that most soils, we talked about, it takes time to build your own soil. So a lot of people just go buy some. A lot of soil that's been sitting out in these warehouses or out at a Home Depot, they're going to get infected. So it's really just a fantastic thing, not only to have to boost your plant's performance, but to also just really mitigate whatever unknown factors might be lurking in that soil or might otherwise settle in there during the grow.
Yeah, that's true, because when we do, even like over the wintertime, if you're growing outside and you leave your soil, all kinds of things come and live in there. And like you were saying, there's kind of a finite amount of space in our soil for microbes. And if you get those good microbes to populate that space a lot quicker than any of these disease that may want to infect the soil, it's a lot better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when, especially if you've, whether you've helped rebuild your aggregates in your soil tilth, or if you just naturally started out with a good one, if you've got good aggregates, you really want those things to be filled up with those beneficial bacteria, because if those bad actors get there first, well, that's, they got a little fortress in there.
Hey, so I was over on your website.
Right.
I was taking a look at your blog, and you have a really good post about soil structure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was probably one of the simplest ways I've seen explained as far as how well to measure out soil and what it actually needs to build it. And you also have up there a really good test on how to test your soil to see how much of whether clay, silt, or sand is in it.
Right. Yep.
Can you talk about that for a little bit, man?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to go over that. I'm, like I said, soil structure, if you can't tell already through the things that I've said, something that just I find very important. So I guess we could just start out by what really basically soil structure is. And, I've said the word tilth a couple times, and I use them sort of interchangeably. Just some people might get mad at that, but really it's about the same. So your soil structure is going to be determined by your degree of aeration, your presence and durability of aggregated particles, those aggregates we were talking about, your nutrient retention, and your rate of water retention and the drainage rate. So in other words, how good is the airflow? How well does it hold and release water? Are the particles glued together in a good way, and will they stay together? Is it a strong enough aggregate? Are there micro aggregates supporting them? And can those particles retain nutrients? So clearly, when you hear it that way, of course, those are all going to be very important things for growing plants. But just to dive a little bit deeper into them, water retention, pretty self-explanatory. Is it going to hold water well enough for your roots to be able to access it and for the nutrients in suspension to be able to transfer through the soil into the root zone. That's pretty self-explanatory. Almost every gardener can understand that. What becomes a little important to consider at that point is the drainage rate. Too quickly and your plant's roots will dry out, there's no retention, but too slowly and your crops can become prone to root rot or any other kind of soil disease. Those bad actors, like we were talking about, can kind of take advantage of that free-flowing water, not flowing, but freestanding water that's in there. So you got to be careful with that. And so your drainage rate, your retention rate, and your airflow correlate directly and really depend on what kind of particles that your soil contains. Clay particles retain water and nutrients pretty well, but almost little to no airflow. So these things, it's clay. You can pretty much imagine what that's going to be like when you're trying to put air through it or water through it. It's porous enough to hold the water, but the air's not going anywhere.
No, yeah, clay will compact really quickly, real easy.
Exactly. So not air and roots are going to have a real hard time getting through there. And, all those nutrients, like I said, they're going to be bound in there, which is where that humic acid chelation would come into. Now, then you got sand, on the opposite side. Sand provides excellent airflow to a root zone, but it's got nowhere near the level of water retention needed to sustain plant growth. You get a bucket of sand, pour a little bit of water through it, and that water's at the bottom of the bucket almost instantly. It's not holding on to that. So you're going to need, you're going to need a little bit more, which comes into the silt particles, excuse me. Now, these are pretty good at both airflow and water retention, but they're not really able to hold nutrients very well due just to their structure and their size. So what you want to come down to is you want to approach what's known as a loam soil. A loam soil is going to be 20% sand or 20% clay, about 40% sand and 40% silt. And if you can get a mixture that's on the nose or just above or just below, there's a little bit of wiggle room with particle physics and stuff like that. That's going to efficiently hold moisture and allow air to pass through easily, while also having enough particles in suspension that are holding on to these nutrients and able to hold them so it's not just water flowing through, leaching nutrients out. The clay will hold on to a little bit, and if it's mixed throughout the soil, then your other soil particles and your beneficial microbes, everything, they're going to be able to get that out. And that's what you're going to, that's what you want, is going to be, like I said, a 20-40-40. And that's going to be your loam. And that's the ideal thing to grow in as far as soil structure goes. And yeah, it's pretty easy to test. If anybody, whether you just buy a quick bag down from a garden store, if you're planting in your backyard or something like that, it's pretty easy to tell what you got. All you need is a glass jar or any other clear container that's got a lid. You need some water, about a tablespoon of dishwashing soap, and your soil. And what you're going to do with that is you're just going to take your jar and fill it about halfway full with your soil. Then you're going to add water until it's about 75% full of that total mixture. And then you dump that tablespoon of dishwashing soap in there. And this is the basis of determining your soil structure. That tablespoon of dishwashing soap is going to kind of help break those particles away from each other because they're all clumped together. There's going to be a little bit of a mixture. Like I said, there will be some clay mixed within the sand and the silt. So this just kind of washes each particle off of the other one, if that makes any sense.
No, it does, because I was wondering what exactly the dish soap was doing.
Right.
But now,
right.
that makes perfect sense that it's separating
Yes.
them so you can see exactly what ratio you have. Okay. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Just like if you got dirty hands, you put some soap on there, the soap grabs onto the particle and just pulls it off of you. It's pulling these particles off of each other. And so it really gets it so each particle is free flowing in that water by itself. And you're going to take that jar and you're going to want to shake it pretty, make sure that lid's on tight, like I said, and you're going to want to shake it pretty vigorously for about 3 minutes. And so with that soap in there and that agitation, you're going to ensure that every single particle is separated from the other one, and they're all going to do what they do. Now it gets a little bit, there's always a weight with something like this. You're going to want to set that jar down on a flat surface for about 2 days and then come back to it. But the best thing about this is it is just so intuitive to see what kind of structure and levels of particles you're dealing with this way, because once it's settled, you're going to see three distinct layers in that jar. And it's going to be your sand on the bottom, your silt is going to be in the middle, and your clay is going to be on top. So looking at those and assuming that your soil, you took your sample from a plot that's got a pretty similar mix to what your sample was, that's going to be indicative of your soil's overall structure. So you can break it down and see, well, what percentage of this, if those three layers constitute 100%, what percentage of it is sand, what percentage of it is silt, and which of it is clay. And at that point, you know what you've got, what the percentages are for a loamy soil. It's the 20 40 40, 20% clay, 40% sand, 40% silt. And so you know what to then go out and get. If you're going to be amending your soil, you can go get some dry blends and mix that in there and do a little bit of tilling. And as I've said, soil structure is very important. A lot of people don't think that they can test it, that they don't know they don't know where to begin. That's a very easy way. You just set it to the side, see what you need, go buy what you need, and start mixing it into your dirt. And you're going to be just set up for a much higher level of success than you would if you just kind of threw your seeds or your clones down and figured, they'll be able to figure it out. Or I'll treat the soil afterwards and just kind of force nutrients into them as it comes. It's like, yes, you can do that, but it's really, plants don't like it. It's not the way they're supposed to grow. The plant evolved in the ground in these kinds of soils, and that's where it's going to do the best, what it was genetically predisposed to do. That's why we're behind super soils and healthy ecologies, because that's just what it wants. That's how it works well.
I thought it was the simplest way to find out what your soil is like, because I'm a big believer, a big fan of recycling my soil for my grows. And just to be able to easily figure out what it is, I was like, man, that's fucking brilliant, man. It's so easy though. It's just yeah. I just wanted to talk about that, man. That was good on you guys for putting that up, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was I was the same thing when when I've had to educate myself about this. I didn't just immediately decide to come into the industry, and I knew what was going on. I find these things, and I'm also just taken aback by not just how easy some of these things are, but how these solutions aren't being put forward to people, that they're just kind of being told to either go pay for something that's going to get it tested, or, just don't even bother and get some raised beds and do stuff like that. It's like, no, it's pretty easy. Let's get these solutions. I want to take a lot of the guesswork out, like I said, make it as foolproof as possible to just grow good cannabis. And so that's what we're trying to do, is bring these not quite simplistic, but just easily digestible bits of information about how to do what throughout the grow.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not about dumbing anything down, but it's about distilling it to where people can just actually hang on to the information and say, now it makes sense.
Yes.
Because
exactly.
It's really easy for people in the industry to use a bunch of big words and jargons as if they're talking to somebody else in the industry.
Yep, exactly right.
Because that's an easy conversation for us to have, but a layperson is scratching their heads like, then they may be just too embarrassed to even ask a question a different way or just simpler. And it's like I said, it's a good thing you guys put out there, man.
Yeah, that's something that again, I'm glad you brought that up. That's what I've noticed is a lot of these, and I don't know if sometimes it's companies trying to focus on these words as a distraction tactic. Not that they have bad products, but that they're just trying to push these words out so that people assume that they know what they're talking about or what's going on. But I've always felt better just in knowing that the consumer understands what I'm trying to tell them. I want them to understand what's going on with the product. The better understanding of the mechanisms with which our products work, I think, gives them a higher level of confidence that not only are they connected to their plant and they're taking care of it well, but they can feel confident with what they're putting in there and how it's working. And so I've been trying to distill a lot of this down. I went to school for communication studies and public affairs of all things. So it just made, I've always wanted people to be able to have better access. It should be accessible to people. They should be able to know what it means without having to get on Google for a couple hours or go buy a textbook. This is supposed to be something we're trying to make everybody more comfortable with, as far as cannabis and growing it. I don't think that we should be adding any more barriers to entry, language or otherwise. So that's been a big part of our company's, not necessarily mission, but modus of operandi. We want people to understand. We're not trying to hide anything. This is what it's going to do, and this is why it does it.
Yeah,
Boom.
for sure. Yeah. Hey, so let me take you back real quick to your terpene boost.
Sure.
Now, when I switch nutrients from veg to flowering, because we know that in veg, you're going to need a lot more nitrogen,
Yes, sir.
just to build that plant structure and the root structure. Whereas when we're in flowering, we're going to really dial back that nitrogen, push up the phosphorus and the potassium.
Yep.
Do I have to adjust that terpene boost at all?
Your terpene booster, the thing about that I'm really proud of is there's really no risk with our terpene booster. You can find that you can use less fertilizers than you were doing it during the flip or otherwise. When you go to start using that, the more phosphorus and more potassium, you can really stay with your same level of the terpene booster treatment, because we're just relying on the mostly microbial actions, and then the auxiliary micronutrients, trace minerals, azomite, a little bit of kelp. These things are just really keeping the soil healthy at that point, and it's not gonna force any of that high level of potassium or phosphorus into your plant and burn it or anything like that. It's just ensuring that when it does come time that plant is searching for it, it's not going to have to look as hard to get it, because these microorganisms and the humic acids have moved it towards the cation exchange. Spots. I'm blanking on that one. But yeah, it's not going to hurt your plant. You really can stick with that. You can use your same levels of normal feeding. You don't have to reduce them if it makes people nervous, but it's not going to hurt your plant. And it's really just a pretty basic, not quite a tea. It's mostly a concentrated extract there. It's not going to hurt your plants. And yeah, you just keep it at the same dosage throughout your entire grow.
Yeah, because that was my concern. Like you just said, that it's going to force the plant to uptake other nutrients when it's not ready for it. So
No. Yeah, and I've run into that question before. It doesn't force your plant. Really, to be honest with you, you could do your feeding, and then, like I said, all of our products are concentrated, so you're going to dilute them before you add them anyway. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, you opened a quart of our concentrate of the terpene booster after you fed your plants, and you just poured that whole bottle into your soil. Really, the biggest risk you're going to run right there is waterlogging your roots. You're going to be clogging the airflow because of all that extra liquid and wasting our product. It's not going to hurt your plants. Your plants aren't going to get burned. I hate to keep using the word foolproof, but it's really just really hard to mess up when you're using our terpene booster. And that's something that we're happy about, that we both landed on a level of such efficacy as far as helping the plant grow and really promoting those terpenes, while also making it just almost impossible to use incorrectly. There's a lot of wiggle room with terpene booster. I've had people double their rates and tell me that they feel like that's the way to go. I've had people use half the rate that's suggested and tell me that that's the way to go. There's a lot of wiggle room here. And it really just depends on not only obviously what kind of plant you're growing, but your situation, your soils. Did you build it? Did you buy it? But yeah, it's completely safe when it comes to that. All of our products are going to be like that. The humic acids, obviously, when you want to keep in mind the pH, I'm not going to advocate pouring on a lot of that undiluted. But even still, your pH is about the only thing that might need a little bit of work afterwards, and it's not going to plummet it or skyrocket it in any way that your plants would be devastated. They might just be a little annoyed.
Yeah, but I think you should be careful about using the word foolproof, because sometimes fools are ingenious. And
it's a fair enough point. Yeah, that's why I hesitate. I just mostly, there's ease and a low margin of error.
Right on. Hey, Spenser, brother, I want to thank you for getting on the phone with me, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you taking the time. Do me a favor. Can you let everybody know how to find Craft Buds?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us online at growcraftbuds.com. That's going to have access to all of our products. There's a couple of the blogs that Alex mentioned earlier with the soil structure and the soil test. If you want to revisit that, that's written down there in just about the same way that I spoke about it. And you can also, I'm most of the time very quickly reachable through our Instagram. I work with a lot of growers through there, answering questions. So if anybody wants to reach out through that, you can find us on Instagram at Craft Buds Official. That's going to be craft_buds_official. You know how Instagram names go these days. And other than that, you're going to find us, like I said, online on our website if you want to purchase. And any contact inquiries, you contact me at Craft Buds Official or at Spenser at growcraftbuds.com.
Right on, brother. Well, thanks again, Spenser. Do me a favor, man. Don't hang up.
All right.
For everybody else, I'm going to play a little bit of music and I'll be right back. And that, everyone, was Spenser from Craft Buds. And I want to thank him once again for taking the time to talk to us and teach us a little bit about soil structure. Now, as always, if you have a question or a comment about this episode, you can send an email to inmygrow@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at inmygrowshow. You can also find me on the Cannabis app at Alex Robles. Well, mis amigos, my friends, you know what? That's all I have to share with you today. Now remember, if this episode has educated you, entertained you, or even given you a little escape from your day, go over to patreon.com/inmygrowshow and leave a financial donation. Now those funds just help me pay for different hosting fees, help me buy equipment, and they just make it easier for me to keep the show going. Now you can also go to the website inmygrow.com, click on the support the show tab and buy a t-shirt. And yet another way you can support the show financially is before you go over to Amazon, click on the Amazon link at the top of the show notes, because that just lets them know that we sent you and we get a commission. Now, if you can't support the show financially, don't worry about it. I get it. But here's how you can help. Subscribe to the website, inmygrow.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And then go over to YouTube, search for the In My Grow Show with Alex, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel. I also need you to go over to YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I'm trying to get a URL that's specific to the show itself. So just take a moment next time you're at YouTube tomorrow. I know you're going to be there tomorrow. Just take a moment and subscribe to the show. Once again, I want to thank all of the artists who let me use their music to put the show together. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to listen. So I'm going to get up out of here now and go to the Ojai Herbal Symposium and listen to my buddy Dr. Jake Felice. As always, I love you all very much. And remember to always grow, learn, and teach.